All right. Welcome to the Hot Shop. We're just coming back from lunch. Today we've been working on making pitchers. So we've been making rainbow patterned pitchers. Since it's Pride Month, we got to do some Pride stuff. So we're getting ready to start making another one. The pattern that we're using is called cane. The process is called pulling cane. So we have some cane that we're using that they're going to get set up to do what's called a cane roll-up. So we're just coming back from lunch. This is what we've been doing today. We've got a couple of these rainbow pitchers that we have made in what's called the annealing oven over there. It's cooling down inside that annealing oven. So these pieces we're making today is the Hot Shop team. All the pieces are going to go to the gift store once they're out of the annealer. So we're just doing some pitchers, like lemonade pitchers. We're going to do what's called a cane roll-up. And I believe we have a cane roll-up video to give you a better idea of what it is that we're going to do. It's kind of hard to explain, so we've got a good visual here that is going to show you how we're going to do what we're about to do. So this morning, we pulled the cane, which is what they're showing right now. This is cane pulling. You attach hot bits of glass to two different rods, and then you pull those apart, and they stretch and make these sticks of colored glass. So we made a bunch of that this morning so that we could make what we're making. You pull and stretch the cane like taffy. The glass stretches into this long rod of glass, and then you chop it up into little pieces. So this shows the process of how those strings of glass are made, and then we're at this part right now where they're lining them up. So we're lining our cane up on a metal plate, and then we'll take a clear bubble and roll it onto the metal plate to pick up the pieces, and that makes stripes on the pattern of the glass. So if you want a pattern on the glass, you have to make the pieces that will create the pattern and then heat them up and put them onto a clear bubble of glass. So we're going to roll the cane up, blow it out into a shape, and sculpt it into a pitcher with a handle and a spout. So our gaffer today, his name is Gabe. He's the one in the hat. Gabe is lining up the pieces of cane for our roll-up. His two assistants today are Sarah and Trent. Trent is getting some clear glass out of the furnace. And that's where it all starts, is in our furnace. So could we get the diagram of the furnace up on the screen, please? I'll give you an idea of how we do what we're doing down here. So the furnace is where all the clear glass is. It's powered by natural gas and forced air, and it's on 24/7. It holds about 1,000 pounds of molten glass. In the furnace, it's about 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 1,200 degrees Celsius. And you scoop glass out of there the same way you get honey out of a jar with a stick. So Trent took this blowpipe, which is a big steel straw. He put the end of it into the pile, or into the bowl of glass, and scooped it out the same way you'd get honey. And now we have a little bit of clear glass on the end of the stick. He blew a bubble into it, and now we're just going to build up the material in layers. Glass blowing is a layering process, and that's simply because it's so hot in the furnace, you can only get so much out at a time, so we have to build it up in layers. So they're working on building up the layers of that clear glass so that we can blow that bubble and create the shape. We have some calipers over there that are going to measure the width of the bubble in relation to the amount of cane that we have on that tray, so that we pick up the right amount, roll it on there, and it's all equally spaced out. So they're getting that ready. You're getting the bubble ready. We have this cane on a little a metal tray that's resting on a fork that we're going to put into what's called the reheating chamber, or the glory hole. Can we see the glory hole diagram, please? So this is our other hot piece of equipment. It's called a glory hole, or a reheating chamber. It's used to reheat the glass. It's also powered by natural gas and forced air, just like the furnace. This one is used to reheat the glass that we've taken out of the furnace to keep it from breaking. The furnaces stay on all the time, but this one gets turned on and off. We turn it on about an hour before we start working, and it gets turned off at the end of the day. It's really insulated. It's got like high fire ceramic bricks that make the inside of it really insulated, so it gets hot faster and it cools quicker. And it's hotter than the furnace. It's actually about 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit in there. And that's what we use to heat up the cane and to heat up the glass as we're blowing that bubble. So most of the time they're working, they'll be going into the reheating chamber, which is the big round one. The furnaces are the ones that are like, but there's two of them. They're the big silver ones. And then the reheating chambers are the round ones that look like a barrel on its side. And glass blowing, when there's more intricate patterns like what we're doing, these cane roll-ups, there can be a lot of moving parts. So it's more of a team effort. We've got Trent is over there getting the bubble ready. Sarah is going to take the fork with the tray of cane and heat it in the reheating chamber. They'll meet at the middle bench to do our cane roll-up whenever it's the right temperature and the right timing. Glass blowing is all about layering and temperature and timing. So we're getting all of those things to align so that we can do our cane roll-up. So while we're waiting for Trent to get the bubble ready for our cane roll-up, I'm going to go over a few announcements for you guys. So the galleries are closed until the fall. I'm sure you noticed that when you walked in. But they're closed for a good reason. Great things are coming here. So there's the fall 2026 Enhanced Lino Tagliapietra Legacy Gallery coming soon. Lino Tagliapietra is revered around the globe for his incredible manipulation of the material and his innovative creations. Tagliapietra has defined American glassblowing since coming to the Pacific Northwest in the early 1980s. No other artist can rival his impact on the field as a maestro, teacher, and mentor. Out of all the museums in the United States, Lino Tagliapietra chose the Museum of Glass in Tacoma to display his archive and to tell his legacy story. So we're rebuilding the galleries to hold that space. So these photos are what we have to look forward to. We're going to clean up the galleries, make them look a little nicer, and display some Lino Tagliapietra work in there. So that's what's coming soon. All right, so it looks like we're going to start doing that cane roll-up soon. Sarah's got that in the fire, getting the cane hot. Trent has the bubble that he's making sure is the right size. They're going to meet at the bench right now and roll up the cane onto the bubble to create the striped pattern for our piece, which is going to end up being a pitcher, like a lemonade pitcher. And it looks like Gabe is getting everything set up for us to pull some more cane. So after we finish this piece, we're going to pull more cane. You can see how that process is done, how we get these little, they look like strings of colored glass. But for now, we're going to work on this pitcher. We've picked up our cane. We're going to melt it in. Trent has the cane and the clear glass and the bubble all on the end of the stick. He'll start to shape that up. We're using the Marver, which is the big steel top table over there, to kind of seal in the cane and get it all flush to the surface. The Marver is for shaping and cooling the glass. So you can Marver on the Marver, which is just rolling the glass across the flat surface. And glass blowing is really a team sport. So we've got all three of these glass blowers working together on this piece. Pretty soon, once we get that cane all sealed up, you'll see them start to work in a team effort to get this piece blown out and shaped all at the same time. Our lead glass blower, or what we call our gaffer, is Gabe. He's the one in the black hat. Gabe is one of the gaffers here at the Museum of Glass. Assisting him are Trent and Sarah. So the colors look a little different than they did when we first picked them up, and that's just because of how hot we're getting the glass. All the colors look orange when they're hot, but as they cool, you'll see that color come back out. So all of these pieces on there are like a rainbow color that are set up to where it looks like a rainbow spiraling around the piece. Right now it all looks orange because of the temperature of the glass. If it gets too cold, it'll break, so we have to keep it in this certain window of temperature so that it doesn't break. But at that temperature, the colors kind of hide behind the heat. So you won't really see the true color while we're working on it until we get more towards the end of the piece and we're almost done with it. And even then, the colors won't really be as bright as they're going to be once the piece is cooled all the way down. The coldest this piece will be the whole time we're working on it is around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Love that noise. Love that noise. So Gabe just used a mold to twist the pattern up a little bit more. That's what that noise was. Twisting the glass up into that mold creates that spiral pattern. So instead of straight stripes up and down, it'll be spiraled. He's also cutting off the end because when we picked up the cane, that is the part where the stripes didn't go all the way down. So he's cutting off the end so that the stripes all meet at a point. They go all the way to the end, to the bottom of the piece. The tip of that bubble is going to end up being the bottom of our pitcher. So it's going to have a twisted pattern all the way up to a point at the end, which will be on the bottom. So you're watching them make this sideways at the bench, if that makes sense. So Gabe will sit at the bench and start using some of the hand tools. Trent is assisting him by getting all of the tools ready. And Sarah is going to be helping on the other end of the pipe by blowing into the pipe while they're shaping the glass on the other end. So it's a team effort. The more intricate a piece is, the more people are on the team. So 3 people's enough to make something like what we're working on today. But if we were going to add more colors, more patterns, we'd add more people to the team. So what the team just did there was use a tool called the jacks. We carved in the jack line, which is a restriction line right off the head of the pipe. That will be the top of the piece. And that restriction line is also how we're going to get the piece off the pipe. It's like a score mark, so we can snap the piece off the pipe right there. Same way you'd use the perforations in a chocolate bar to snap it on that spot. So that line is where we're going to remove it from the blowpipe when we're ready. For now, they're mostly going to be working on shaping the bottom of the piece, which is the end of the bubble farthest from the pipe. And you can see those colors coming out a little bit more now that we've blown and stretched the glass out a little bit thinner. It's going to be like a rainbow pattern spiraling all the way down our piece, which is going to end up being a pitcher. So we're making the body of the pitcher. We'll work on the top later, and we've got to add a handle to it. So we've got a ways to go still, but we've made a couple of these today. They're going to keep making these. So if you missed the beginning, then we're going to make another one so you can see that part. We also are going to be doing what's called pulling cane, which is what these are, these big, long pieces of glass. This is cane. So when glass is hot, it's stretchy. If you take a big blob of glass and you pull it and stretch it, it makes a big, long stick like these. You can chop them up into little pieces, and then you can add these to your bubble to make the stripes. So they're going to pull some more cane, make some more of the stripe patterns. But for now, we're going to work on this pitcher. They're flattening the bottom of the piece. And once we're done with the bottom, we'll take the piece off the blowpipe to work on the top. If the glass gets too cold, it will crack. So you'll see them getting up to go heat the glass up in this reheating chamber. We've got to keep the glass in a certain window of temperature so that it doesn't break. If it gets colder than about 1,000 degrees, it could crack when you put it back in the fire. So their working window at the bench is less than a minute each time Gabe sits down. He's going to work on the glass while it's hot, and then he can feel that it starts to get too cold. He'll stand up and heat it back up again. But if you look up at the screen, you can see a little bit better what they're doing. They're flattening the bottom of the piece with the drywood paddle and the jacks. So the bladed tool is called the jacks. They're a very versatile tool. You can use them a bunch of different ways. But now I believe they finished flattening the bottom. They're going to put what's called a cookie on the bottom of the piece, which is just a little disc of glass. They're going to add a little bit of extra glass to the bottom of the piece. That way we can do the next part of the process. That torch that Gabe was just using is called the fluffy torch because it's a fluffy flame. We also have other torches that are used for different reasons. The fluffy torch helps with equalizing the temperature of the whole piece. The part closer to the metal is colder than the part farthest away because the part farthest away is the first thing in the fire and the last thing out. So it's hotter than the rest. That torch helps equalize the temperature so that we can remove it from the blowpipe without sending a crack down the side of it. Trent also just brought a little bit of clear glass, and we put a cookie on the bottom of the piece. That just gives us a little bit of extra glass down there so that we can do the next part, which is called the punty transfer. The punty is going to be a separate rod that we transfer the glass onto. So we'll attach this to a different rod by putting a little bit of glass on there and sticking it to that cookie we just put on. And then we'll remove it from the blowpipe while it's attached to the punty, which Sarah is getting ready right now. She's getting just a small amount of glass out of the furnace, and she'll shape it up kind of like the end of a Q-tip, a little pointier, but sort of like the end of a Q-tip. That will be attached to the bottom of the piece. So just like the application of the canes to the piece, the temperature and timing is really important for this next part of the process. To transfer the piece off of the blowpipe and onto our transfer rod, it's got to be the right temperature so that they attach, but they can come apart later. And it's got to be at the right timing so the piece doesn't fall off of the pipe or the punty. So they're lining up their temperatures. Sarah's going to bring the punty over to the bench, and they'll attach that bit of glass to the bottom of the piece where they just added that bit of extra glass. Once it's attached at the right temperature, if you put water on the glass, it creates a crack. So they'll strategically place a drop of water on that line they carved in right off the head of the pipe, which will allow them to break it off the blowpipe on that specific spot. So they're going to make a weak point that they can remove the piece off the pipe. So they're lining up their temperature. Gabe will guide this onto the piece. Hot glass sticks to other hot glass, so they attach. And then he'll put water on that restriction line he carved in. Once the water's on there, he'll tap on the blowpipe, which will send vibrations through the pipe and into the glass. And the weak spot will break, so it'll remove it from the pipe. So water right there, tap the pipe, it comes off. And now it's attached to the punty. The reason we did that is because we wanted to change the shape of the top of the piece, but you can't do that when it's attached to a blowpipe. So we have to flip it around by attaching it to the bottom on a different rod. And now that it's flipped around, they can change the shape of the top half, they can add the handle, they can add the spout, and then we'll have our piece. We'll have a little picture, a little Pride Month picture. So Gabe is just making sure that punty connection is right in the middle. It's kind of like working on a clay wheel. We want it to be centered, but we're doing it sideways, so we might have missed the mark. We're just fixing it. And now that it's ready, he's going to start getting the top of the piece hot. We had to get it pretty cold to take it off the blowpipe, so now he's just got to spend time getting that part hot again so he can clean up the spot where they broke it off the pipe. They did break the glass, so it's jagged and broken up there. When glass is hot, you can take a pair of shears, which are glass cutting scissors, and you can trim the glass. So they're going to take some scissors and cut off the broken parts on the top. And then it'll be straight across and a little bit cleaner looking. Then they can finish off the shape and add all the details, and we'll have our picture. You can tell that the glass is hot if it's glowing orange. So that part that's glowing orange at the top is hotter than the bottom where it's not glowing as much. Gabe is going to pull and stretch the lip of the piece of the glass out. That makes it taller and thinner and easier to cut. And then he'll take the shears and he'll cut off the uneven part at the top. To cut the glass, it has to be really hot. So he's just making sure he can build that temperature up really, really high. So he's pulling and stretching the glass out. Trent is using these drywood paddles to shield Gabe's hand from the heat coming off the glass. So you might not have the best view, but the paddles are necessary for Gabe to be able to work with the glass that close. The glass is radiating a lot of heat off of it, and his hands are like an inch away, so they get really hot. If you put one of those paddles in between the glass and your hand, it makes it not so hot. It blocks that radiating heat, so it's easier for him to do the job. It just kind of blocks your view a little bit. But now Gabe can put the blades of the jacks inside the piece. And as long as the glass is hot, he can change the angle by applying different angles of pressure with that tool. So he's opening the lip out to make it more of like a cylinder shape for our pitcher. And Trent is using the drywood paddle to help him stabilize that shape while they're fixing up the shape. It's hot and moving around, so the paddle helps keep it in line and symmetrical. And if you'll see, Sarah over here is getting glass out of our furnace right now. That orange blob is actually just clear glass. It's just really hot, so it looks orange. That's going to be our handle for our pitcher. So she's going to blow a bubble into that glass. Our handle will be hollow, so it's lighter. She'll blow a bubble in there, and she'll bring it over to Gabe, who will attach it to the piece and sculpt it into a handle while it's hot. If you watch Sarah, she's going to start the bubble in the glass by doing what's called blowing and capping. You blow air into the pipe and you trap it in the pipe. That trapped air builds pressure and forces the air out into the glass, and that's what forms our bubble. So she's trapped air in the pipe. It's making its way through the pipe into the glass. It happens really quickly, so I hope you saw what just happened. But now there's a bubble in there. She's just going to stretch it and shape it into the shape that they need for the handle. She'll bring it over to Gabe, and he'll attach it. And then we'll have our handle for our pitcher. And again, just like everything else, temperature and timing is important. So they're lining that up. They'll meet at the bench when they're both ready and make our handle. So when glass is hot, it's stretchy. They cut it, they pulled it, stretched it, folded it over, and made our handle. Now they're just going to clean up that shape, make sure the handle is attached properly, and then they'll make the spout. But now we're using a different torch. So this is a hot torch. It's hotter, so that's why it's called the hot torch. They're going to make sure that connection is really melted in well. And then they'll spot heat a specific part of the lip so that they can fold it out into the spout. The torches we're using run on propane and oxygen. So they're a different hookup than the machines like the reheating chamber and the furnace. Those run on natural gas and forced air. But we use propane and oxygen for these two torches. That just gets them really hot really fast. So they're spot heating the area where they attached the handle to make sure it's really melted and fused on there well. And now they're spot heating the area where they want to fold the lip out to make the spout. So we've just got a little copper rod they're going to use to make the spout. And now they're just going to fine tune it, make sure they like it before they take it off of the rod and put it into what's called the annealing oven. Glass has to go through a molecular change as it cools, and that has to be done in a controlled environment. So basically, annealing is the slow cooling process of glass. So our annealing oven is that big black box on the right side of the studio. All the other pitchers we've made today are in the annealer at about 950 degrees. It's a good resting temperature. At the end of the day, when the box is full of all the pieces we've made, that's when we'll start the program that systematically cools down the temperature overnight. So the glass has to cool slowly and evenly. If it doesn't, it'll crack. So if we leave it out here, the outer skin of the glass will get colder than the inside, and that will cause the glass to get stressed out and break. So we have to cool it all down at the same temperature in that controlled environment inside the annealing oven. So they're getting ready to take the piece off the punty. I know the fluffy torch can be really loud, so if you don't hear what I say, I'll try to say it more than once. But they're going to remove this from the punty the same way they got it off the blowpipe. At the right temperature and timing, they can shock the connection and break it. Then they'll clean up the bottom where it breaks. It won't break a hole in the bottom of the piece. It'll just leave a sharp ring of glass. So they're going to get rid of the sharp ring by using the torch to melt the glass really quickly, getting it hot enough on the surface they can stamp their Museum of Glass signature on there, because this will end up in the gift shop later on after it comes out of the annealer. But there's our piece. Let's give the team a big hand. Beautiful picture. Into the annealing oven with all the other pieces. We'll see that again tomorrow. All right, go team. So now they're gonna reset a little bit. They'll make another one, They'll either make another one, or are you going to pull more cane now? Okay. They're going to pull some cane that will be green. I think they ran out of green, so they got to make more. So we don't put the color in the glass. I've got a little piece here as an example. This is a bar of orange glass. We buy these from the store. Same way a painter goes and buys tubes of paint, we go buy bars of colored glass that we can heat up and melt and make things out of. So chemists mix different metal oxides into clear glass, and that's what gives you the different colors. So a cobalt oxide would make a cobalt blue. Manganese makes purple. Cadmium could make a yellow. And there's like 300 something colors we can pick from. I can't tell you what metal makes every single one of those, but that's a couple examples. So they're going to pick up a little bar of glass similar to this, but it'll be green. They'll encase it in layers of clear glass, and then they'll get it really hot and pull it apart like taffy, and it'll make these big, long strings of glass. This is like a transparent red cane, so we're going to make this, but in green. We've got these wooden ladders on the ground, because when they stretch the cane out, they're making a really long cane. So they'll have, what? Oh, just kidding. It's going to be green. It's going to be blue and then green. We're making blue and green. We're making cane. That's what matters. So they're going to take one of the rods. They're going to be solid rods, so this isn't part of a blowing process. They're going to take a solid rod and get the color bar on there, encase it in clear, and then while that big blob of glass is hot, they'll take another rod and stick it to the end, and then they'll pull those two rods apart to make a big long string. So it's going to be from there all the way over here, a big long string of glass. When the glass is hot, it's stretchy, so they're going to pull and stretch it out literally like taffy. And as it gets thinner, it will get colder and stiffer. So they're going to pull it until it's too stiff to continue pulling. And that makes a big long string. Then they can chop that string up into little pieces like these, and they'll line them all up and roll them into a bubble to make stripes. So if you want a pattern on your piece, you have to make the components to make the pattern. So if you want stripes on the piece, you got to make these stripes and then add them to the bubble. So that's what we're going to do next, is pull some more of this cane. So they've got, you can probably see it, they've got this box with a bunch of cane in here, a bunch of little pieces. They just need more greens and more blues. So they're going to make some more real quick. And once they have all of that, we'll make some more of those pictures and maybe some different shapes. But we've got our big silver box over there is called the garage. That's where you park pieces of glass until you need to use them. So it's about 1,000 degrees in there. Trent just picked up a big bar of green glass and took it to the reheating chamber to get it molten hot. He'll shape it up a little bit and then encase it with a layer of clear glass. They'll probably encase it with a couple layers of clear glass before they pull it and stretch it. But that'll be an opaque green color. There's transparents and opaques. So when we go to the store and we buy the color, it'll say the color, and then it'll have an O or a T next to it, and that will tell you if it's going to be transparent or opaque. And chemists do all of the color making for us. Different metal oxides, like I said. But regardless of what color it actually is, when it's hot, it will look orange. Like that bar of green glass definitely does not look green right now, and that's just because of the temperature. All the colors hide behind the heat. Even the clear glass looks orange when it's hot. But we line up these, they look like ladders, wooden ladders on the ground, because they'll stretch and pull it out and then lay it on top of the wood. If they laid it on the concrete could shatter or stress the glass and then break it. So if we lay it on the wooden pieces, then we can break it where we want it to break so that we have the same length pieces of cane. So while these guys are building this up, we have a video to show you a cane roll-up in case anyone got here later and didn't see this earlier. So artists can use the cane to create the pattern lines on the surface of the glass. Often the cane is pulled out like long ropes of glass and chopped down to be reworked in the process. So we have a video that shows you that process. Let's see if we can get that video up on the screen. There we go. So this is what we're doing today, pulling cane. These guys are getting ready to get this blob of glass to do what they're doing up on the screen. So they'll attach it to a separate rod. They'll give one of the rods to the assistant, and then Gabe will take the main rod, and they'll just pull them away from each other. It looks like a big, long rope. And as it gets colder, it gets stiffer until eventually it freezes into place, and it's just a big stick of glass. So that's the end goal, is a big long string of green glass is what we're doing first, the green. So Sarah's getting the post ready to attach to the blob of glass that Gabe has, and then they'll pull those two rods apart to stretch the glass out. So the team's getting ready to do that cane pull. They're going to attach the end of this glass that Gabe has to the post that Sarah made here, which is just a flat little disc of glass that we can attach the main body of the piece to. And then they'll walk away from each other to stretch it out. And you'll see it in real time as the glass cools, it will turn back into that green color, Right now it looks orange because of how hot it is, but as they stretch it, it will get thinner, and thinner glass cools faster. So that green color will come out as the glass gets colder. But glass is stretchy like taffy. You literally just pull it and stretch it out. Make a nice long rope, kind of going at the right timing and pace so that the glass doesn't fall onto the ground. And as the glass gets colder, it gets stiffer, so they have to pull a little bit harder until they're using tension to really straighten that big long string of glass out. But you can see the colder part is already turning green. And as it gets colder, it turns more into that green color. So these two are just going to keep walking away from each other until the glass gets too cold and they can't keep pulling. And then they'll lay it down on these ladders and chop it up into these little pieces once it's cold enough for them to hold, to touch. But you can see that green color coming out. Now they'll have plenty of material to cut up into pieces of cane to roll up into stripes onto the pieces. So they'll put the chopped up bits of cane onto that tray, line them up, and then roll them into a bubble. Nice cane pull. So these two made that look really easy, but it's a very specific timing and shape of the glass that you need to do that successfully. And now while it's still kind of hot, Gabe can use metal tweezers to shock the glass and break it right where he touches it with that metal. So he's cutting these into little pieces, or at least smaller pieces, and then they can take it over to our cane cutting tool right here that will measure them all into the same exact size, and they'll just chop it little pieces at a time. That way all the pieces of cane are the same length, and it makes applying them to blow out into a shape a little easier. Trent is adding some of our cane to this tray so that we can do another piece. So they're getting everything set up to start making another one of our pitchers. And of course, because it's June, we're going to do rainbow for Pride. And all these pieces will go to the gift shop here. You can buy them all in the gift shop. But while we're waiting for the team to get set up to start this next piece, if you're ever curious to know what's happening here in the Hot Shop, we do live stream the process Wednesdays through Sundays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can watch it through their YouTube channel, or you can go to museumofglass.org and click under the Hot Shop tab, which will show the live stream. So if you ever want to see what's going on here, but you can't physically make it here, you can watch it online. We also have every second Saturday of the month is Family Day, and there are activities hosted by the education team. So there's events and little hands-on workshops that you can do on Family Day every second Saturday of the month. can see if they can play it because we're waiting. Anyway. So while we're waiting for them to get started here, if you saw in the Grand Hall, we had those big paperweight sculptures created by Paul Stankard. He's a phenomenal fine paperweight artist, so he makes things like that a lot. We've got a video that kind of shows you his process a little bit. Could we get that on the screen? It might take a second for them to get that on the screen, but we do have a video you can watch for that. If you want to look at this tray, that shows what our pattern of color will look like on our next piece. So they'll roll those up, they'll be straight lines, and then they'll twist them.
In my hand puts to scorn all machinery.
Oh, here comes the video.
This sentence is from one of Walt Whitman's most respected poems, Song of Myself. I'm Paul Stankard. I'd like to share with you the process and techniques that I have both perfected and developed. These techniques have enabled me to create this glass orb that I have titled Orchid Bouquet Cluster. The process that I use to create my botanical art, it's called flame working. And here I'm taking commercially available colored glasses, melting them into what I call material preparation. Here I'm making the green glass rods to press out leaves for the design. When I'm focusing on a blossom, I take advantage of colored glasses rolled into powder glasses, and that gives me a variety of shades. Here I'm focusing on the blossom. I'm taking the lip of the blossom and sealing sepals and petals onto the lip. And by heating the petals and shaping it, I'm developing a Paphiopedilum orchid. Once I have the blossom finished, I put it in an annealing oven and anneal it at 975 Fahrenheit so that it becomes stable. When I flame worked all the components, I bring them to the hot plate on my bench, and by keeping it hot with a Bunsen burner underneath, I attach the botanical components into the design. Once the components are finished into a design, I bring it to a pickup oven where it is going to be encapsulated in clear glass. My assistant is preheating clear glass to be dropped onto the colored glass design and encapsulate the orchids. We repeat the process with two halves sealed together and shaping it into the final orb. In the studio, I take advantage of two heat sources, the glory hole and the gas oxygen bench burner. The heat involved is upwards of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, shaping the glass into a sphere. By putting two halves together, I'm able to suggest the design is 360 degrees. Magnification plays an important role in the presentation of the design. Once the orb is shaped, it goes into the oven to anneal for 40 hours. Once the glass is annealed, it's then ground and polished to be finished.
So while that video was playing, they did their cane roll, and now they have the stripes. They're twisting up the stripes to make that pattern. Welcome into the hot shop. So everybody that just joined us, I'll kind of start from the beginning so you can get a good grip of what we're doing here. So the hot shop is called that because we're working with the glass when it's really hot. Can we get the furnace diagram up, please? So everything starts with our furnace. We've got 2 furnaces in here. There's one over there and one over there. They're powered by natural gas and forced air. They're on 24/7, and each one holds about 1,000 pounds of molten glass inside of it. It's like a big salad bowl full of honey, basically, is what it looks like. But it's a high-fire ceramic bowl full of glass. You take a stick or a straw, and you scoop the glass out of there the same way you'd get honey out of a jar. And the clear glass looks orange when you take it out of the furnace, but that's just because it sits in there at about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 1,200 degrees Celsius. So that's where it all starts. You guys came in kind of in the middle of our process. So they added some color application and patterns to this piece of glass, and they're blowing it out into a bubble so that they can make a pitcher, like a lemonade pitcher. And because it's June, we're doing a rainbow pattern for Pride Month. These pieces that we're making all today will be sold. Yeah. They'll be sold at the gift shop here in the museum. So they've made a good handful of these today. We're working on another one right now. So this is mostly clear, but it has stripes that are swirling on it. It all looks orange because it's all really hot, but when it cools, it'll be a rainbow pattern. There's a bubble inside there. Gabe is our gaffer today, and that's just the lead glass blower. He's the one in the hat sitting at the bench. He's having Sarah blow into the pipe to help him inflate the glass while he shapes it, and Trent in the long sleeve black shirt is also assisting. Once we take the glass out of the furnace, we start to shape it and blow it. If it gets too cold, it breaks. So the other machine that we're using here is called the reheating chamber, or the glory hole. Could we get the glory hole diagram on the screen, please? So this is the other machine they're using. It is called a glory hole, or a reheating chamber. It's also powered by natural gas and forced air. It's used to reheat the glass, and its temperature is about 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's actually hotter than the furnace. It's just a big barrel of fire that reheats the glass, basically. If the glass gets too cold, it breaks. So we'll be using the reheating chamber the rest of the time while we're making this piece. Right now, Gabe is carving in what's called the jack line with a tool called the jacks. The jack line will be the top of the piece. So you're gonna watch them make this sideways at the bench. That jack line is how we're gonna get the piece off the pipe later. It's like a score mark. You can't really hear Gabe from the audience where you're sitting, but he's telling his assistants what he needs them to do and how they need to do it and when, and they're all just following his lead. So he's the gaffer, which is the lead glassblower, with his 2 assistants whose job is to help him make the piece. So they're mostly going to work on the bottom of the piece right now. They've got a flat in the bottom, so they're working towards that. Each time Gabe stands up to heat the glass up, that means it's gotten too cold. So the working window isn't very long. It's less than a minute each time it comes out of the reheating chamber. That's because the thinner the glass is, the faster it'll cool down. And if it gets too cold, then it cracks. So they're trying to stay in this certain window of temperature to work with the glass. And the way you learn what that certain window is through trial and error. So when you're a new glass blower, you're breaking a lot of stuff so that you can learn how to not break it. So So you can see the part that's glowing orange is the hotter part, and the colder part you can see the color start to come out a little bit. That's how you can tell the temperature, is by the color and the movement of the glass. When it's hotter, it's going to move around more. So you've got to constantly keep the pipe turning to counteract gravity, otherwise it'll fall towards the ground. So they're working on flattening that. Trent has a dry wood paddle, and Gabe is using the blades of the jacks on the sides of the piece. And they're kind of creating a mold in the air from the blades of the jacks and the paddle to flatten the bottom of the piece. Once the bottom is done, we'll start to work on the top. But they're finishing up the bottom. And to do the top, they'll have to remove the piece from the blowpipe. So that's another whole process that we'll get to pretty soon. We're getting ready to add what's called a cookie to the bottom of the piece. That's just a little bit of extra glass on the bottom. It gives it more stability so that we can take the piece off the blowpipe and work on the other side. So they're adding a little cookie of glass to the bottom. And the reason they're doing that is because they need to transfer this piece off the blowpipe and onto a different rod. That rod we're going to transfer the piece onto is called the punty, P-U-N-T-Y. That rod is the one that Sarah has over there. She's getting the punty ready to attach to the bottom of our piece onto that bit of glass they just added, the cookie. So they'll attach the punty, which is that little bit of glass on the end of a solid rod, onto that little piece of glass they just put on the bottom of the piece. That will allow them to break the piece off the blowpipe, and it will stay connected to the transfer rod, or the punty. That essentially will flip the piece around 180 degrees so that we can work on the top. So that torch that Gabe was just using is called a fluffy torch. It's used to equalize the temperature of the whole piece. The part of the glass that's closer to the metal is colder than the bottom. The bottom of the piece is the first thing in the fire and the last thing out, so it's hotter than the part that's closer to the metal, which is actually taking heat out of the glass. So the torch is helping them get the whole thing to be the same temperature. That way when they remove it from the blowpipe, it doesn't crack. So they're attaching the punty to the bottom of the piece. The temperature and timing is really important, so they're lining those up so that they can transfer this piece successfully. At the right temperature, if you put water on the glass, it'll crack the glass. If the glass is still too hot, it doesn't make a crack. So at the right temperature, he'll put a drop of water strategically on that line he carved in. That creates a weak spot, and then they break it on the weak spot, and now it's on the punty, flipped around. We can work on the other side. They're making all of this look really easy, but it comes with a lot of practice, a lot of trial and error. You learn how to not break glass by breaking an unbelievable amount of glass. So it comes with a lot of practice. But now they've flipped it around. They can work on the top of the piece. They're just making sure that punty connection is right in the middle. Once it's all squared up and centered, they can start to heat up the top half of the glass and change the shape. But now that it's more blown out and in the right shape, you can really see that color starting to come through. You can see that rainbow swirl of colors. We still need to open the lip up and shape it like a spout, and then we also need to put a handle on the piece. So those are the rest of the things that we need to do. We're working towards cleaning up the top and shaping it to put a spout. And then we'll add a handle. But where we took the piece off the blowpipe, we broke the glass right there, so it's broken and jagged at the top. Gabe is going to get it hot enough that he can stretch and pull the glass out to make it thinner, and then also make it to where he can cut off the uneven parts on the edge. So he can get the glass hot enough that it melts the sharp broken glass, and he can manipulate it and cut that off so that the top of the piece is more uniform and straight and clean looking. So that's what he's working towards now. But it was really cold when we broke it off the blowpipe, so this heat usually takes a minute just because we have to get it from cold to really, really hot, and that just takes time for that temperature to build. But when he comes out, you'll see the top half of the piece is definitely a lot hotter than the bottom. Those colors are glowing orange, which is what indicates that they're hot. He's gonna pull and stretch the glass. Trent is using some drywood paddles to block the radiating heat from getting on Gabe's fingers. The glass is over 1,000 degrees and his fingers are like an inch away. So putting the drywood paddle in the way makes it easier for him to work on the glass without his hands getting very hot. I know it kind of blocks your view, but it's necessary for it to be possible for him to work with the glass that close. Now he's trimmed the lip of the piece. It's a little straighter. The piece that he just cut off is on the ground, and when it gets colder, you can see the color design on there. It's still pretty hot right now, though, so I can show it to you later. But now that it's trimmed up, they can work on the shape. So they want to make this more of like a cylinder shape. He's got to open the lip of the piece out. So they're going to use some of the hand tools that we've been using to shape that up. Trent is getting the jacks ready by applying a layer of beeswax to them. The beeswax is like a fluid layer in between the metal and the glass, so it makes using them easier, makes them slippery, so that they slide and glide on the glass a little bit better. So we're slowly working the lip of this piece out to where it's a little more open and shaped like a cylinder. And now we're just about ready to put the handle on the piece. So Sarah's gonna get a blowpipe, which is a big metal straw, and she's gonna get some clear glass out of the furnace. She's gonna blow a bubble into it and shape it kind of cylindrical so that we can add it to our piece. So we're gonna be making a hollow handle so it's not so heavy. She's gonna blow a bubble into the pipe. So that is done through a technique called blowing and capping. If you blow air into the pipe and you cap the pipe, which means you trap the air inside, the air that's trapped in the tube is going to build pressure and break the surface tension of the glass to form our bubble. So it's going to force the air into the glass to create a bubble. It happens really fast. So she's going to trap air in the pipe, and then that air is going to shoot out into the glass to make a bubble. So she's going to do it right now. Watch the glass, you'll see that bubble come out. Happened really fast. If you blink, you miss it. But now there's a bubble in there. She's gonna shape that up and then bring it over to Gabe so that they can attach it to create our handle. So they'll attach it, pull it and stretch it, cut it off, and then while the glass is hot, he's gonna grab it and sculpt it and shape it into our handle. Now we have a handle. Last thing we got to do for this is just clean up that handle connection and then put a spout on it, and then we'll have our nice little pitcher. But I mentioned this earlier, glass goes through a molecular change as it cools, so that has to be done in a controlled way, in a controlled environment. All the pieces we've made today are sitting in that big black box over there. That's called the annealing oven. The glass has to go through a slow cooling process called annealing. Otherwise, it cracks from thermal shock. All the glass has to cool at the same temperature at the same time. So we put it into the oven, and we start the program. There's a box on the side of it that will systematically cool it down overnight. If it cools too quickly, it breaks. So we control the speed at which the glass cools, and that allows us to cool it down, and it comes out in one piece. The thicker the glass is, the longer that process goes, but these are blown, sculpted objects. They're not, the thickness of the glass is like 1/4 of an inch at its thickest. So we can cool it overnight. When it comes out of the annealer, it'll be in one piece. Those colors will be a lot brighter, and it will be a functional piece of glassware. So there's two different kinds of torches we're using right now. One's called a fluffy torch, and it's because the flame is fluffier. And one's called the hot torch, and that one is much hotter. They run on propane and oxygen, so they get really hot really fast. So the fluffy torch is for equalizing the temperature of the piece, and the hot torch is for torching a specific part of the glass. So they're going to use the hot torch to make the spout, which they already did. Never mind. They're going to use it to clean up the bottom of the piece when they take it off the punty, which is what they're doing right now. They get it off the same way they got it off the blowpipe, by shocking the water with the right temperature and timing, or shocking it with water, excuse me. As long as they put that on at the right temperature, he'll tap the rod and it should come right off the punty. But it usually leaves a sharp little ring, so we're going to melt that sharp ring down with the hot torch and get the surface hot enough that they can stamp Museum of Glass on the bottom, because this will end up in the gift shop where you can buy it. So they stamped it. They'll load it into our annealing oven. Let's give the team a big hand for another beautiful pitcher. Now they've got a handful of those pitchers in there. If you missed the beginning of this pitcher, we're going to set up to make another one. So we'll give them a couple minutes to start setting up, and then we'll get going again. All right, so we're getting stuff set up to make another one of those pictures. If you missed the beginning, we're going to get started with another one. Well, while we're waiting for the team to start, I'm going to give you guys some announcements. Third Thursdays happen every third Thursday of the month. The Museum of Glass is open and free to the public from 5 to 8 p.m. on the third Thursday of every month. And we also have a live streaming here. If you are interested in watching more glass blowing, but you can't physically come here, there's an online live stream. So if you go to themuseumofglass.org under the tab that says Hot Shop, you can find the live stream. And it's Wednesday through Sunday from 10 to 5 p.m. We have our live stream. So the videos that you're seeing up there is what's on the live stream. And then you can hear the MC explaining what's going on. So if you want to watch glass blowing, even though you can't be here, you can still do it on the live stream. There's also a YouTube channel for the Museum of Glass that plays those live streams too. And since Gabe was talking to you about the Kids Design Glass, I can give you a little bit more information about that. It's usually created towards the end of the month is when we do our Kids Design Glass projects. It's one of our long-standing programs here at the museum, created to inspire the youth to create like fine artists do here in the shop. Can we see the Kids Design Glass video, please? So this will give you an idea of what the Kids Design Glass is all about.
Glass has always been sort of made by designer and maker. And so to highlight that relationship, we created Kids Design Glass, where kids age 12 and under can make a drawing and submit it to us. We'll make 2 pieces, give one to the family, and we'll keep one to put in our collection and build the exhibition that has been Kids Design Glass.
We get a huge stack of drawings and we sift through them to pick the ones that we can make and the ones that are interesting.
200-300 drawings a month, so we get a stack of drawings.
We go through each one. It's a drawing and a story about the drawing.
Probably the most unique drawings are the ones that really stick out. The ones that aren't like based on a character that they've already seen. The ones that come straight from their imagination.
Usually kids by that age, they're not really tainted by like pop culture and outside influences. They kind of like what they like.
My original idea for the rainbow marshmallow, when the marshmallow melts, what comes out are their tears. And this one cries rainbows. Like in the inside, it's all rainbow. It was the first time that I was like kind of made contact into like the glass blowing world. And what was really fun about it was knowing that a piece that I've come up with that is like part of my self-expression was like interesting enough for others to like incorporate it into the real world.
Being in a creative environment, I think that builds self-esteem, and the fact that they're going to have this thing that they're going to have the rest of their lives of something that they had as a child, and then knowing that they're actually like in a museum collection, which is pretty incredible when you're under 12 years old.
If any other kids are entering the program, then I'd say I really hope that your art gets chosen. It is really mesmerizing to see the details being put on. I was just very happy that the Hot Shop team actually chose my art. who knows, maybe if you're timing it just right, you could actually get up there when your art is like being displayed up there.
For 20 years, we've made some wild things. It's so free, and I would say loose, but what we really pay attention to is making sure that we're capturing all the details.
There's so many challenges in making the kids design drawings, and I think that's something that maybe the average viewer wouldn't notice.
A lot of these objects are very fragile and are just different than any of the other glass I usually work on.
The way the kids draw them, they just have no idea of what, glass can do, so they just draw it however their mind imagines this object.
We're talking with them, making sure that we're seeing the color the same way, making sure that, the eyes are on one side or are they supposed to be on both sides.
Appendages and weird helmets, they're all great challenges and things that we wouldn't necessarily run into without this program. I think it's inspiring for us as glassmakers, and I hope it's inspiring for the kids doing the drawings. I hope the kids kind of see that their creativity is this muscle that they need to exercise.
One of the best parts about the program is seeing the kid in the front row giving us tips on how we can make it better or things they don't like that we're doing. They have a voice here.
I designed the lion crab in 2011. Just recently, we went back to the museum, and seeing my piece on display at the museum was just incredible.
I mean, we have times where people come in the crowd and some young adult, in their 20s or early 30s, is like, hey, you made my kids design glass, and they bring out their phone and show us a picture, and it's them like 10 years old. And, it's to see the impact that we've made. I think every single one is special.
Yeah, so that was the Kids Design Glass video. If you're interested, we've got submission forms in the Grand Hall you can grab. But while that video was playing, they did a cane roll-up. See ya. Now they have their color. They're going to twist it so that that pattern is on the piece. And then they'll start to blow the bubble and shape it into our picture shape. So this is about where this was when you guys walked in. So now you've seen the whole process. Feel free to hang out and watch it again. I mean, I'm just saying you've seen the whole thing now. So I don't want to try to talk over that torch, so I'll turn the microphone on. But they're about to transfer the piece from the rod that it's on to the rod that Sarah has over here. We need to flip the piece around so we can work on the top. So they're going to break it off the blowpipe by attaching it to a different rod. Sorry. Yeah. I got the microphone so you can hear me. It can get really loud in here, like that torch is pretty loud sometimes. But they're going to transfer the piece off of the rod that it's on and onto this one that Sarah has over here. They're going to stick this little bit of glass to the bottom of the piece. Hot glass will stick to other hot glass. So they're going to get it hot and attach it, and then break it off the blowpipe. So they are going to break the glass, but in a controlled way on purpose. So they just transferred the piece off the blowpipe and onto this other rod, which flipped the piece around, and now they can shape the top of our piece. They're going to open the lip of the piece to make it into a kind of a cylinder shape. Then they'll give it a spout and put a handle on it to make a pitcher. Yeah. So Gabe is the one with the black hat. He's going to heat up the glass and cut off the parts on the top where the glass broke. So when glass is hot enough, you can cut through it with scissors. He's going to cut through hot glass with scissors. That's called trimming. So they broke the glass off the blowpipe. He's going to trim off the broken parts so that the top of the piece is a little bit cleaner and straight. So you'll be able to see that you can cut through hot glass with scissors. If you can't see the angle from where you're sitting, you can always look up at the screen that gives you a different angle. We're getting ready to put a handle on the piece. So we've got the body of our piece. It's going to be a, what is it called? It's going to be a pitcher, and they're going to add a handle right now. So this will be our handle that Sarah has over here. She'll bring it over to Gabe, and they'll put the two bits of glass together and sculpt a handle out of this clear glass. So we put the two pieces of glass together, and now Gabe is going to sculpt this bit of hot glass into a handle. The longer it's out here, the colder it's getting. So while it's hot, he's sculpting it, and then we'll need to get it hot enough to attach it to the piece. Hot glass sticks to hot glass, so if they heat up that end and then stick it onto the piece, they'll stick together, and then we'll have a nice stable handle. Last thing they got to do is put a spout in there so that we have a pitcher. So they're going to add the spout. They just got to finish cleaning up the handle first. They just added the spout to the piece, so now it's pretty much finished. They're going to fine tune it and get it ready to take off of the rod that it's on. Once they take it off there, they've got to put it into this big black box. The glass has got to go through what's called the annealing process, which is the slow cooling of the glass. If it cools too quickly, it cracks. So we have to put it into the annealer to cool it down slowly. So it'll stay in there overnight. This piece will cool down overnight inside the annealer, and once it comes out, it will go to the gift shop. So we're going to sell all of these pieces that we're making at the gift shop here. But for now, it's going to go in the annealer so it can cool down slowly. There we go. Another one in the annealer. And we don't quite have enough time to make anything else, so that will be the end of our glass blowing for you guys today. If you have questions, feel free to stick around and talk. But other than that, they'll just be kind of cleaning up.
Yeah, thank you.